Hi, I'm Julieanne. I'm an addict.
Hi, Julieanne.
Good evening. What a lovely place to be on Christmas Eve. I can't believe my good fortune to be with all of you tonight. It's a spiritual, not religious program, so I'm not going to talk about anything that's happening in the last couple days or the next couple days, except for saying that, in terms of the spiritual principles, the fact that darkness turns to light is really meaningful, and what a beautiful night to talk about miracles, to a very beautiful group of people. I want to tell you a little bit about how it was that I came here, and I'm going to preface it by saying this is a very special week for me because last weekend I celebrated a clean time birthday, which for me was really significant, which is 15. The first time I was 15, as in 15 years old, I was pregnant, addicted to my drug of choice, and on my way to inpatient psychiatric treatment for 2 years. So I can assure you that my life is better because I'm clean. And when I put that message in my sponsorship pod on WhatsApp, every one of them said, you have to tell that story when you sit down, because just looking at you, no one would ever believe, that you were once locked in a bathroom listening to voices come out of the radiator. No one would ever believe that you were carried through the streets in a straitjacket to be put on an airplane after having been pumped full of Thorazine because I was attacking everyone around me, so how does a nice-looking girl like me wind up in a place like this? I'll tell you, it's very simple. Literature says it as clearly as I could ever hope to, Why am I here? Because before coming to the Fellowship of NA, I could not manage my own life. I could not live and enjoy life as other people do. I had to have something different. And I thought I found it in drugs. And I don't say that lightly. I thought I found it in drugs. I thought that drugs were the solution to my problem. It never occurred to me that drugs were in actual fact keeping me from living, because I didn't even know what living meant. I remember when I first came into the rooms, I said to my sponsor, recovery, what am I recovering? And she said, look it up in the dictionary, which was something that I have come to love doing, look up in the dictionary. And it still really didn't make much sense to me because I didn't feel like I had anything to recover. I was born into a middle-class family in suburban Illinois in the middle 60s. I grew up in the 70s. My dad was a doctor. From the outside, it should have all been tickety-boo. But my mom was a using addict. And my, very first memories are of plates being thrown and hiding under tables and being yelled at for stuff that I didn't understand. I remember being like 6 or 7 and going into my bed and trying to sleep like my mother did with my face down in the pillow like this. And when I did it, I couldn't breathe. So I didn't understand how she could sleep like that, And there just wasn't that much love, and I didn't feel loved. I didn't love myself, so by the time I was 7 years old and truly a star in my kindergarten class, I was stealing from all the kids in my class. My parents were getting called in. What is going on here? And they're like, something wrong with her. This is way before there was social services or anybody looked at kids acting out intensely and said something's going on at home. So it just looked like I had a problem, As my mother's using progressed, it became more and more dangerous in our house. And I did everything I could in my small person's way to signal to every adult around that there was a problem. And no one could see me. And when I was just a few days before my 10th birthday, my mother had been at a party the night before, and she was like, I don't know why you can't be like Joni, what's this girl's name? She, did the table and served everybody, and she's amazing, and you're not, and go make me a cup of tea, and then get in the basement with your brother, and don't come out, or you're gonna lose your allowance. So I'm tramping, downstairs to try to be a good kid, and bring my mother her tea, and went in the basement with my brother, and we were like, don't come out, right? And my father was doing rounds at the hospital. I was 9, my brother was 6. When my father came in and, saved our lives, because my mother had fallen asleep smoking on barbiturates, and our house was burning down, and we were, locked in the basement, and, ran to the neighbor's house with the sirens going, and, we had no idea what was happening. And, 2 really vivid events happened for me that weekend that I have brought with me all the way to this moment, when I'm talking about it to you today. The first was when my father told me that my mother was dead. We were sitting inside somebody else's bedroom at the house that we would come to stay at for a couple months. We were sitting, I remember I could picture in my mind where we were sitting, and my father said, your mother's dead. And instead of crying, I don't think I had any tears left. Instead of crying, it was like this hexagonal glass shower stall kind of like descended. And I was like, I'm not participating anymore. That's it for me. And I felt like I was inside somewhere safe, and I could look out and people could look in, but I was done. And the other thing that happened was my godmother Nancy, my Aunt Nancy, said to me a couple days later, honey, feelings are like a volcano, and if you don't let some of them out, they're gonna erupt. I didn't know what she was talking about, but I'm still talking about it today because I didn't do that. I took any feeling I might have had and I locked it with me inside of this shower stall. And that's the story I would tell you. If my dad were here, what he would tell you is that I basically tried to then turn around and burn everything down around me. He tried to get people in the house to look after me. I tried to get them all fired. I was running away. I was stealing. I was absolutely out of my mind in grief and rage. When I smoked pot for the first time, it was like I finally found a way that I was going to be able to live in this world. I felt giggly. I felt connected to the people I was with, and I wasn't screaming in pain on the inside anymore. And I was off and running. There are pictures of before and after, before I found drugs, and I look in these pictures like an animal with her leg caught in a trap, like the grief and the pain is all over me, and switch 6 months, 8 months down the line, and I just look dead. People tried to help me. This is a running theme in recovery, right? People did try to lend out a hand. I had therapists for about 20 years on and off, People tried to help me. But I couldn't tell the truth, which was that my mom, I didn't know what was going on with my mom, but I couldn't tell. It was like a secret, right? Addiction is a secret. What happens in our house is our secret. So I didn't tell anybody, and I couldn't get any better. And my using, once I got a taste of it, I was out the door, So when I tell you, by the time I was 15 years old, I had a boyfriend who was 18. I'd run away from home. I was living at his house. I was addicted to 8 or 10 drugs I came to love. I'd gotten thrown out of 2 schools. I was on my way to try another one. I didn't know that it was a rock bottom. I didn't know that I was not okay. I thought I was saving my life. And I hear it all the time from people, it was the best idea I had. The one thing I will say is this, the grief that I carried and the sense of abandonment, you would have thought it would have been to my parents, but it wasn't. I was really, really mad at God. I felt like, how could this sort of thing happen? And it's only in recovery that I look back and I think, who as a kid is already having a fight with their higher power? It's sort of indicative of the fact that even as a little kid, I was a spiritual person. And a lot of my using, when it was at its very best, was the search for a spiritual solution. It says in step 11 about, the higher our drugs took us and the lower, and we got involved in crazy things. There were times when I was using, when I felt beautiful, and I felt whole, and I felt connected to the merry band of outsiders that I was with. I didn't have any pain, and I felt that joy that Roland talked about. It's just that when I came down, the absence of those things was so painful that I didn't really want to live, So when I was 15 years old, after having gotten, my parents took me to some place, and it was supposed to be a school, and this girl said to me, she said to me, "You do know that this is like a psychiatric institute, right?" I was like, "Oh, I'm not going to be here. There's nothing wrong with me." And she said, "Honey, if your parents can pay, you will be here." And I tried to run away, and I got caught, and they brought me, straitjacketed me and sent me to psychiatric care 10 miles down the road from Hazelden in a center full of other addicts. So when I read, We Do Recover, and, for the first time in man's entire history, a simple way of improving itself in the life of many addicts, it wasn't there for me when I was little. And so I bumbled around, and I got out of psychiatric, and I went to university, and all the things in geographicals, and I tried to stay clean, and I couldn't stay clean. And it was like, the best I can tell you is it was like, I would pour all this good stuff into this pot, and at the same time I would poke holes in it, and all the good stuff would run out. And I always thought that one day it would be different, And I remember the day that I realized that I didn't have the skills to make it different, that I had everything: beautiful children, husband who loved me, all the money a girl could want, and I was still stuck in a hexagonal glass shower stall. And I couldn't feel a thing, And it was clear that I wasn't going to be able to keep doing that. And I remember lying in bed and being like, God, help me, true story. God, help me. I will do anything. I will do absolutely anything. And this voice came down from the heavens and said, there's only one thing you need to do. And I was like, oh my God, anything. Just tell me, God, anything. You need to stop using drugs. And I was like, anything but that. Have you got a plan B, And there was no plan B. So, some girl said to me, well, you're very spiritual. You read tarot cards. Have you ever thought about going to a 12-step fellowship? They're very spiritual. So, and you like doing homework, and there's a lot of written work. And so I did. I rocked up to Narcotics Anonymous in 2002. Clear that I wasn't going to make it. Really clear that I wasn't going to make it. And I had all these people around me. And I walked in the door, and it was this time of year, and people were sharing honestly about their families, and they were sharing about their feelings. And as I walked out that day, I thought, there is absolutely no way I'm ever coming back here. I didn't see that everybody in the room were the same merry band of travelers I'd been with all that time. I didn't understand anything because I was still in my shower stall. I couldn't feel a thing. But I kept coming back. And I came back for a few years. and I did everything it said on the tin. I had a sponsor, I had sponsees, I did service, I went to meetings, I put out chairs. I did absolutely everything. Except my heart was closed, not just to this program, but to the very higher power that I have come to understand can heal me from the inside out by following a few very simple steps. And so I relapsed, not on my drug of choice, but it wasn't getting any better. I felt like I was a dog with my nose pressed against the window of life, and and I just couldn't figure out why I couldn't get it. So I had the most spectacular relapse. You know, and I woke up one day after a blackout with the car mangled in the driveway, and it was like a light bulb went on over my head. And I realized finally all those 2-3 years of literature came into my heart, and I realized that I had no other choice but to rely on the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous because I didn't have a clue. So that's when my recovery really began. I had done some steps before. Like I said, I'd done service, I'd been in the fellowship or whatever, but when I tell you I didn't talk to anyone, I didn't take a phone number. And so I started over again. And I started over again with the total understanding that I was going to make a life of this. And so I had to take the program of Narcotics Anonymous as it's written in the text, the simple things that we talk about, the steps, traditions, service, sponsorship, fellowship, and I was going to have to figure out how to make that meaningful for myself. And what I wanted more than anything was to feel connected. And it's something that the previous speaker talked about, and it's something that I love in living clean. It's a path, it's a process, it's a way of life. So when I started working the steps, it was the most fantastic thing for me because I had absolutely no idea how to live. And I didn't understand how my mind worked. And so here's what I learned. I am so terrified of things happening to me that are bad, not because the world is malevolent, but because I had bad things happen to me. That I'm dragging around this sack of the preconception that something harmful is just around the corner. And the only way that I can ward off the unexpected, right, that which I cannot control, anything that I can't manage, is to worry about it and think about it compulsively, like a washing machine going over and over as though that's going to control it. And I think about it and think about it and think about it and think about it until I drive myself insane. And I am in so much pain from the insanity of compulsive thinking that I will do almost anything to relieve that pain. And because of that, I need a way to let go of my fear that something's going to happen that is not going to be good, and I need a way to hand that over. Those steps 1, 2, and 3, that understanding has never left me. The first time I came in, it was like, I can't control my using, I can't control your behavior, I can't control my past. Using makes me insane, and so I'm going to have to find a new way to live by turning it over to a power greater than myself, which was, in the beginning when I came in, was Narcotics Anonymous. It was this program. Over time, it has proved to be the most sophisticated recipe, for my thinking, when I get into a doom loop, but also now for where I can still get tricked up in steps 1, 2, and 3, which is I don't always like the way I feel about stuff. Sometimes something will happen. Let's just say something really simple, like I'm tired, but I have to go out, or I'm tired, but I think I'm supposed to do something. Don't be tired. Don't be sensitive. Don't like him. And so I get very hard on my own feelings. And one of the things I'm powerless over is my own nature. I'm sensitive. And sometimes I get tired, and I'm getting older, and so I need a way to find love for myself and gentleness. And that's what I got from working the steps. I got the very thing that I didn't have when I was little, that I couldn't practice anywhere, that I looked everywhere outside of myself for. And that was a way to care for myself. The first time I did step 3, my sponsor said to me, I said to her, well, what does it feel like, to let go? What does it feel like to be cared for? And she said, well, why don't you pray for it? Why don't you say to your higher power, higher power, show me what it feels like to be cared for, so that you start to understand what you didn't get when you were little. And I remember I would lie in bed at night and be anxious about something. And it was like I could feel this imaginary hand rubbing back my hair the way I did it for my children. And it was like, oh, it feels like everything's going to be okay. It feels like I'm not alone. It feels like I'm lovable, and I'm worth this sweetness. And it was with that I walked into my first step 4. I think that the most loving thing that is in my life, the most permeable thing, is inventory. I hear people talk about inventory as though it's a really unkind process where you look at yourself and you beat yourself up and it's, I'm defective and there's something wrong with me and everything like that. All I ever wanted was to know what was my part of it and what wasn't. It's like, did I kill my mom? Did God kill my mom? Was I was so confused. And I remember I would lie in bed after I was using, and it would be like, what did you say? Did you say it right? Did I do it right? Whose fault is it? And it was, back to insanity. It was one of the most difficult parts of being with my own head, trying to understand, what's mine and what's not. But what was so difficult is that, because I hadn't really ever experienced what a loving voice sounded like, it was really hard for me to look at anything without beating myself up. And the first person who was really, really loving to me, besides, that voice of God in my head at night, was my sponsor. It was really the first time, and she was slightly older than me, and very beautiful, and very warm and maternal. And I remember I didn't know how to cry, and I used to go to her house if I wanted to have a cry, and she'd open her yellow door. And I would just look in her eyes, and I would cry, and she would come and she would hold me, and it was life-changing. And I would tell her, I did this, I feel this, I want this, I did this, and she would say, oh, darling, she was Italian, oh, darling, there, she would pet me. And it was like, I don't know, it was like getting to go back to the start all over again and try it differently. And she taught me through that first step 4 that the way that I looked at everything was just way too harsh, By the time I got to my 6 and 7, I understood that I had these pathological glasses that were always looking for what was broken. And she taught me how to look softly and gently. And she taught me this great line from step 11. She nicked it and put it in step 6 because she was so fluent. And she used to say, oh, darling, skilled people are not born with their skills. Of course you behaved unskillfully. You don't know how to do it differently. But if you stay clean a day at a time, you will learn. I loved this woman with all my heart. She stopped being my sponsor when I was 5 because she had to move away. But she's recently become my sponsor again. And I cannot tell you how happy I am. Anyway, I'm not going to take you all the way through all 12 steps, but I will tell you this. I love this program with all my heart. I don't have glass shower around me anymore. I have people's telephone numbers in my phone who are in recovery that I can call and talk to. I can be honest about where I've been and where I'm going. And it's like being born again. And because of that, when I first got to do the traditions, I couldn't believe that someone was going to teach me how to look after something I loved. Because I didn't really ever love when I was little. I didn't have that shower, so I didn't feel love, I couldn't give love. Like, I didn't know, how do you look after stuff? The 12 steps taught me how to look after myself, but like, by the time step 12 was over, it was like, I would do anything for this program. I would do anything for somebody else to have the chance to have what I had. What can I do? I am somebody who's always done service, but before that, it's like, how do we take this beautiful thing, this God-given gift that has changed all of our lives, and protect it from harm? So I've worked the traditions a couple of times, but I just did it again recently. And of course, the longer you stay clean, the more love you have to give back to this program. And, learning how to keep this safe has been such a privilege, I think we've got them right here. Our common welfare. I didn't even see you except to steal your drugs. What is our common welfare? Imagine a self-centered addict like myself putting something first that isn't me. And the weird thing is, I could do it with my kids. I understood service to a child, to a being, to a student, because I'm a teacher. But I didn't understand, how do we take something and ring fence it so that it stays available for all of us? Our common welfare should come first, which is very important, in times like this, in the middle of a pandemic, right? Where it would be I don't like wearing a mask, I want you to know. I want to go around, I want to do whatever I want most of the time. For me to take this step to care about our common welfare it's just as big of a miracle as getting clean. Group conscience? Can you imagine that not only do I have a higher power, but the fellowship has a higher power, and that higher power will guide us to look after it, and all we have to do is come together, have a moment's silence, get out of the way, and serve the very power that keeps us clean. What a privilege. Another one of my personal favorites, and I think this one is really important to me, is Tradition 6. So as I said, I got inadvertently put in psychiatric care instead of Narcotics Anonymous, so I didn't get any better. I had 25 years of therapy, and I didn't get any better. I'm very fortunate. At the time I came into the Narcotics Anonymous Fellowship, there wasn't a huge treatment center culture. So I didn't hear anything about therapy. But I want you to know that if I had walked in the rooms and I had heard people talking about therapy and their inner child, I would have gotten up and walked back out again. And so I am so grateful that we have this awesome responsibility to protect our fellowship by not having outside issues affect the message of Narcotics Anonymous, which is that any addict, anyone, can stop using, lose the desire to use, and find a new way of life. So Tradition 6 is very important to me. The more I work the traditions, just every single one of them is so beautiful. But it brings me back to, everything takes me back to the shower stall. When you take that shower stall away, do you know what you get? You get love. You get the beating heart of somebody and somebody else. And yes, there's the weirdness that things could go wrong. But when my heart is open, I feel a profound urge to be of service. I never knew that would happen to me as a result of working this program. But, when I first started offering service in Narcotics Anonymous, I worked on the helpline. We were in a tiny little office in Victoria, me and another addict showing me what to do. I was broken. I hadn't worked in such a long time. I didn't know that there was anything of value left in me. And I got taught how to write names in a book and, code callers. And it was the first time that I had a modicum of self-esteem. And it's been my experience all the way through. When I was getting divorced, I didn't understand how to use money. I had been sort of on marital benefit for a really, really long time. I offered my service as the treasurer of our area, and I learned how to use a bank. I learned how to use Excel. I learned how to do profit and loss. I learned how to balance my checkbook. I mean, it was extraordinary, the gifts that, service has given me. But more than that, I am so grateful to have changed my life, that I would do anything to keep the door open for the next person to come. I thought it was over for me. And in the time that I've gotten clean, I've gone back to graduate school. I started working for the first time in 15 years. I have a successful private practice. But probably the most successful thing that I've done in recovery is get divorced. Now, I know that's going to sound really weird, but the thing is, if you think about my history, I am defined by loss, by bereavement, by grief, by abandonment, so I have stayed places that were not full of love for such a long time. There's a line in Living Clean that says, intimacy is conscious contact with another human being. And when I first read that, I thought, conscious contact? I know what that feels like. I have it with my higher power. And if I don't feel it here, then it means my God is not present here. And I understood what I could do, and it was the hardest thing I have ever done to actually choose to walk into, grief and bereavement. But one of the things I didn't know about recovery when I first came in was that because the balm of love, the balm of one's higher power, seeks to heal you from the inside out through the process of living clean one day at a time, that the events that happened to me when I was, that the events that happen now generally tend to bring up an event from the past to give me the opportunity to heal it. And it's one of the gracious and loving ways that my higher power gives me the opportunity to recover. What I think is my inherent connection to my higher power. I think that's what I recovered. And so, every time that I have a sponsor who said to me once that if it's hysterics, it's historics, which I really love, because all of us have had the experience where something's happening and it's like, oh my God, I can't, your reaction is so over the top because it's bringing with it something from before that seeks to heal. Nothing, could ever equal the healing that took place when I relied on my higher power, what I thought was my higher power's will for me, to move towards something more loving. I also had the experience after my divorce that our previous speaker talked about, which has been brought to your knees in recovery, when I started dating again. Because that was an area of my life that was broken and busted. And so the first time I went into it like the little 15-year-old whacked out junkie that I was when I first started dating. And it was a bloodbath. And that was really interesting because my kids, who had only ever seen me clean, right, who had ever known this, paragon of recovery, had an opportunity to meet the addict who lives within, and they were horrified. They were like, oh my, I can't believe this is happening. And I wanted so much to control it. I wanted to be like a good something. And weirdly, it was my recovery that kept me from performing and allowed me to relax into the safety net of 12 years of daily recovery so that I could lose my marbles and put them back together again with the help of my higher power. So I know I'm coming to the end of this long-winded share, and I just want to say that, from a girl who wanted to die, or certainly to be cut off, because I didn't have any connection to my higher power, my connection with my higher power has turned out to be the absolute heart of my life. It is the great love affair that I have always wanted. When I did my first step 11, I couldn't believe that, through prayer and meditation, I was going to get to improve my conscious contact with the God of my understanding. I felt like I was getting married. I felt like I had been washed clean through recovery, and I was in this white robes, and I was going to get together in a proper marriage with my higher power. And my second step 11 wasn't quite like that. My second step 11 was really about meditation, which is the cornerstone of my relationship with my higher power. Because in order for my higher power to guide me, I need there to be space and time for my higher power to reach me. So every day, for 30 or 40 minutes, if my higher power wants to give me guidance, it knows exactly where to find me. And in the process of learning to meditate, which I learned to do when I was getting divorced and I was too upset to sleep, in the process of learning to meditate, I've gotten this amazing skill, which I consider to be at the core of my recovery tool bag. And that is, when thoughts come in, I can just bat them away and slowly get to the point where my head is rather empty. And that was hard. When we say it's a path, it's a process, and it's a way of life in living clean, I would like to add to that it's a practice. I practice meditation every day, the same way I practice staying clean every day by not picking up, That ability to hear my higher power's will for me by using meditation has enabled me to to be better able to offer service, particularly in sponsorship, where I don't always agree with my sponsees and I'm able not to tell them about it. Do you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, I am opinionated. I can tell you how I choose to live, but how you choose to live is your business. It's back to tradition 6, I don't have, what you choose to do outside of the boundaries of a very narrow framework that I can share with you because I'm a recovering addict. It's not for me to say. And so meditation's been fantastic for that because I'm able to just say, I can hear what you're saying, but we're not going to, we're going to put that to the side. It's helped me in service. It's helped me in group conscience, so that when we're all sitting together, I'm not like, it's like, and it's been an absolute delight, and I have found that my higher power is actually quite chatty. So I don't know. I know I'm coming to the end. I don't know what else I have to say except that, I don't know you, but I love you. I've never met a person, even the ones that trouble me, in a meeting that I haven't thought, I'm glad you're here and not out there, I wish for you and I wish for myself peace of mind, clarity, love, generosity of spirit, the ability to put that into practice and service in your home and, in our fellowship, and patience, which I think is one of the most beautiful assets that a person can have in a program that takes a while to unfold. So if you are new, I wish for you patience, and I wish for you a good sense of humor, and come and say hi to me if you see me in a meeting, because I'd like to say hi back, and I'm going to leave it there. Thanks.